Maya loved her late showers. They were her small rebellion against the noise of the day, a private pocket of warmth where emails couldn't reach her and the world outside her apartment finally seemed to loosen its grip. Steam gathered quickly, wrapping the bathroom in a soft blur. The mirror vanished. The tiles sweated. The only clear sound was the steady rush of water against her skin. Her phone rested near the sink, playing quiet music, the glow of the screen dim and comforting. She tilted her face up, letting the heat soak into her scalp, and closed her eyes. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Then something shifted. Not a sound exactly. More like the prickling awareness of being noticed. Her shoulders tightened. The calm slipped, replaced by a strange alertness that made her heart beat a little faster. Maya opened her eyes and wiped a circle in the fog on the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, warped by droplets. Wet hair clung to her cheeks. Behind her, the shower curtain hung limp, the room small and ordinary. She let out a nervous breath and gave a tiny laugh. "You need sleep," she murmured. The building always made noises. Pipes knocked like distant footsteps. Elevators groaned. Somewhere, a television laughed through thin walls. Anyone living here long enough learned to translate every bump and creak into something harmless. She shut her eyes again, forcing herself to relax. Tap. The sound was light, but in the quiet it landed hard. Her gaze snapped toward the little window above the toilet. Frosted glass. Locked. Impossible to see through. Moonlight pressed faintly against it. She waited. Nothing. Probably the heater settling, she told herself. Old apartments breathed in weird ways. She began counting backward from 10, the way she used to during storms as a kid. 9. 8. Tap. Closer this time. Certain. "Hello," she called, hating the tremor in her voice. No reply came. No movement followed. Just the endless pour of water and the tightness in her chest. The tree outside had been cut down weeks ago. There were no branches left to scrape the pain. Maya reached out and turned off the music. Silence swallowed the room. Slowly, she became aware of another sound beneath the dripping faucet. Breathing. Not hers. Maya's mind refused to accept what she was hearing. The air in the bathroom felt suddenly thinner, harder to pull into her lungs. She held her own breath, desperate to separate imagination from reality. The other breathing continued. Slow. Patient. Close. Her eyes darted around the small room, searching for movement in the curtain, for a shadow beneath the door, for anything that would make sense. The lock was still turned, the handle unmoving. Steam drifted lazily, innocent, as if the world had not just tilted off its axis. "I'm alone," she whispered, but the words had no strength. She grabbed a towel with shaking hands and stepped out of the tub, water dripping loudly onto the tile. Every tiny splash felt like an announcement of where she stood. Vulnerable. Exposed. The breathing stopped. That was worse. "Maya, think," she muttered. Panic would make her stupid. There had to be a source. Pipes. Vents. Neighbors through the wall. Sound carried strangely in old buildings. Yes. That had to be it. She forced herself to move, inch by inch, toward the mirror. If someone were in here, she would see them behind her. The fog had thickened again, erasing the room into white. Her hand rose and wiped across the glass. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Lines had been carved through the steam, deliberate, finger-width trails that exposed the mirror beneath. They weren't random. They formed shapes. Letters. Her pulse roared in her ears as her brain struggled to read them. "I can see you." The towel slipped slightly from her chest. She caught it without looking away from the message. Her thoughts began crashing into each other, desperate for logic. I wrote that earlier. I must have. Maybe as a joke. But she knew she hadn't. She remembered coming in, remembered the blank mirror, remembered the first flicker of unease. The writing was new, fresh enough that thin streams of condensation were still sliding down through the gaps. Someone had stood here. Someone had breathed the same air. The certainty hit her so hard she staggered back. Her gaze flew to the door again. Still locked. Which meant one impossible thing. Whoever had written it was still inside. Maya didn't remember leaving the bathroom. One second the words were burning into her eyes, and the next she was in her bedroom, water still clinging to her skin, the towel half falling, her heart sprinting so fast she thought she might faint. Whoever had written it was still inside. The thought repeated, louder each time, until it drowned out everything else. She spun in a slow circle, scanning the corners of the room. Closet door. Shut. Curtains. Still. The narrow space beneath the bed, dark and unreadable. Her ears strained for a shuffle, a breath, the whisper of fabric. Nothing. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and she nearly screamed. A message. Unknown number. For a moment she simply stared at the notification, unable to open it, as if reading the words would make them more real than the mirror already had. Finally, with trembling fingers, she tapped the screen. Nice tattoo on your shoulder. The world seemed to drop away beneath her feet. Her hand flew to her shoulder automatically, covering the small crescent of ink she had gotten only days ago. She hadn't shown anyone. No photos, no posts, nothing sent to friends. It lived beneath sleeves and sweaters. Except tonight. In the shower. Her thumbs moved clumsily. Who is this? The reply appeared so fast it felt like the sender had been waiting, smiling, hovering over the screen. Turn around. Every instinct told her not to do it. Prey animals survived by not looking toward the predator. If she didn't turn, maybe he wouldn't exist. But the command dug into her nerves. Slowly, she obeyed. The room was unchanged. Empty. Yet she felt it again. That awareness, thick as humidity, crawling over her skin. Watching didn't require standing behind her. Watching could happen from anywhere. Her gaze drifted to her desk. The laptop. A tiny white light glowed beside the camera. On. Maya's mouth went dry. She knew she had closed everything earlier. She always did. Work habits. Privacy habits. Still the light burned steadily, unblinking, like a mechanical eye. Her phone vibrated once more. Smile for me. Something inside her fear hardened, shifting from confusion into a cold, terrible understanding. He wasn't in the apartment. He was already inside her life. For a few seconds Maya could only stand there, staring at the tiny glowing above her laptop screen. It felt alive, aware, a pupil tightening with interest. Her fear had been wild and directionless before, but now it narrowed, pointing straight at that light. Someone was out there. Somewhere comfortable. Somewhere hidden. Watching her unravel. Her phone trembled in her grip as another message appeared. You look better scared. A rush of humiliation burned through her chest, hot enough to cut through the panic. He wanted this. Wanted her small, shaking, helpless in her own home. No, she whispered. Her mind began to move again, faster now, pieces connecting. If he could see her, then he needed cameras. If he needed cameras, then they could be found. He was not a ghost slipping through walls. He was a man with equipment limits mistakes. She lifted her chin, forcing her breathing to slow, and faced the laptop. Show yourself, she typed. The reply did not come immediately. For the first time, there was hesitation on the other end. Her heart pounded, but a strange strength rose with it. If he could command her to turn around, she could command him too. "If you're so close," she wrote, "prove it." 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then came the answer. "Go to your balcony." Her stomach twisted, but she moved. Each step felt like walking toward the edge of something high and irreversible. She slid the door open, and the cold night air crashed against her damp skin. The street below lay mostly quiet, washed in orange light. At first she saw nothing. Then she noticed it. A van parked across the road, engine off, windows dark. Inside, near the windshield, a tiny red spark glowed.
Camera.
Pointed straight at her building. At her. Her pulse thundered, but now it carried anger with it, heavy and powerful. He had dragged his gaze into the physical world. He had given himself a body. Maya raised her phone and zoomed in, hands still shaking but determined. As she did, the side door of the van shifted slightly. A silhouette moved behind the glass.
Real.
Breathing. Mortal. Her next decision came from somewhere deeper than fear. If he was watching her, then she would make sure the world watched him back. The sirens reached him before escape did. Maya kept the camera on the van, her arm aching, her breath breaking in sharp pulls that tasted like metal. Windows in nearby apartments flickered alive one by one as people leaned out, drawn by the flashing red and blue reflections racing across the buildings. The van lurched forward, tires squealing, but it didn't get far. A patrol car cut across the street, blocking the exit. Another slid in behind it. Doors flew open. Officers shouted commands that cracked through the night. For the first time since the messages began, Maya felt the balance shift. He wasn't the hunter anymore. He was a man in a vehicle with nowhere left to go. She kept filming until her hands became too numb to hold the phone steady. Even when neighbors began talking to her, asking if she was okay, she couldn't answer. Her voice had retreated somewhere far inside, hiding from what it had survived. They took her statement under bright hallway lights. Words spilled out of her in pieces. Mirror, breathing, tattoo, laptop, texts. Each sentence sounded impossible when spoken aloud, yet every officer listening wore the same grim expression. They had heard stories like this before. Inside the van they found cameras, monitors, storage drives. Evidence of patience, planning, repetition. She was not special to him, and somehow that hurt almost as much as being chosen. Weeks passed. Technicians swept her apartment. Landlord replaced fixtures. Friends stayed over. People told her she was brave, smart, lucky. But night remained night. Water still sounded like static in her ears. Steam still made her heart climb her throat. Sometimes she caught herself scanning dark surfaces for lights, tiny artificial stars waiting to blink on. Healing, she learned, was quieter than terror and took longer. One evening, she forced herself back into the routine. Shower on.
Door closed. Breathe.
When she stepped out, she faced the mirror and wiped it clean. Words appeared, and her body reacted before her mind could, panic flaring bright. Then she remembered. She had written them herself before turning on the water. A promise, carved by her own hand. I see you. Not a victim sentence. A warning. Maya met her reflection until her pulse slowed. Somewhere behind bars, a watcher sat with nothing left to see. But she was still here. And now she was looking back.